Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, New York State Attorney General resigns after a magazine publishes a long piece detailing the myriad ways he's alleged to have abused some of the women in his life. Also, we take a look at the incel movement, which is part of the growing extremism online that's targeting women. We'll be talking to Lisa Lincoln, a gender specialist from the American University in Paris, on just how representative these movements actually are. And as the Cannes Film Festival gets underway in the Me Too era, Australian actor and jury president Cate Blanchett talks about the work still needed to be done when it comes to promoting equality. But we begin in New York, where the state's top law enforcement official has resigned in the wake of a sexual abuse scandal. 4 women recounting allegations of physical abuse by Attorney General Eric Schneiderman in an article published recently by The New Yorker. The accusations are all the more shocking as Schneiderman was an outspoken figure in the Me Too movement against sexual harassment. Catherine Viette has the story.
Bombshell allegations of physical and psychological abuse have toppled yet another powerful man. Eric Schneiderman resigned as New York State's Attorney General on Monday. His abrupt fall from power comes after The New Yorker magazine published the accounts of 4 women who've accused Schneiderman of physically assaulting them.
Sometimes he'd tell me to call him master, and he'd slap me until I did. He started calling me his brown slave and demanding that I repeat I was his property.
What's made the allegations all the more shocking is Schneiderman has positioned himself as a champion of women's rights and a vocal supporter of the Me Too movement. He took on movie producer Harvey Weinstein and his production company in the wake of widespread allegations of sexual misconduct, filing a lawsuit in February. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo praised the women for their bravery and has now appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the allegations.
I think these women were especially courageous. They were dealing with the Attorney General, the top law enforcement. According to the article, they were threatened not to say anything, and they came forward anyway.
Schneiderman issued a statement denying the assault allegations, saying he was engaged in role-playing.
In the privacy of intimate relationships, I have engaged in role-playing and other consensual sexual activity. I have not assaulted anyone. I have never engaged in non-consensual sex, which is a line I would not cross.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said women who may have been victimized should not be afraid to come forward.
Rest assured you will be believed, and that the information will be important to protecting others, and will be important because it is part of breaking this chain where people feel they can't speak up.
New York Solicitor General Barbara Underwood has been named acting Attorney General, while state lawmakers convene to choose Schneiderman's replacement.
Now, here's a new term for us all: incel. Yes, incel, which refers to an online community of men who complain about being involuntarily celibate. They dream of a social order granting them access to the women of their choice. The movement captured headlines after a man who declared to be a follower recently drove his car into a crowd of pedestrians in Toronto, killing 10 people, 8 of them women. But is this group, while extremely small in number, reflective of a much larger movement hidden just beneath the surface of polite society? With me to discuss this is Lisa Lincoln, a gender specialist from the American University in Paris. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us. Incel sounds like a tiny fringe group. It's views of a handful of lonely men, but just how representative are they?
Well, it is a tiny group indeed, but this is nothing new. There's absolutely nothing new, of course, about men critiquing, abusing, threatening, and even killing, in fact, women in the name of some sort of a overreaching order of society, the way things should be. And there's certainly nothing new about them doing this in the name of male superiority. Many people are talking about incel as being the new version of male superiority. But in fact, this is something that I think it would be a big mistake to see as being something that is just a pocketed incidental issue that has nothing to do with what's happening with regards to misogyny in society at large.
So are we right to be worried about a group like this?
I think we're right to be worried, but I think that we need to be worried in a very specific way. This group in many ways indicates that it's not just women, and it's not just the marginal groups that they target as well, that suffer from patriarchy or what we could call a kind of a hegemonic masculinity, but it is men themselves. These men themselves are also victims of patriarchy in many ways.
But of course, as we see with the internet, it has proved to be a platform for women to come forward and talk and recount their tales of being sexually or physically assaulted. You know, as a result, we've seen, you know, the Me Too movement emerge. But the dark side, the flip side of all of this, of course, are groups like this one.
Right. So, in fact, what's very interesting with regards to what you're saying, the flip side, the dark side, is that we see that with this group of men in particular, this disenfranchisement that they're experiencing, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, is not a result of women by any stretch of the imagination, except sort of indirectly. It's the fact that they do not have a place in society. They do not have the power that they think they should have. They do not have the recognition or the respect that they think they should have, or more importantly yet, that they feel that they once had, or perhaps more specifically, once would have had it not been for women. So as a result, the people they are attacking, or the people, the group that they are singling out as being those responsible for this, is women. But in fact, the same group that is responsible for women's subordination is the same group that are responsible for these men's sense of being disenfranchised.
But they don't see that, do they?
They don't see that. And of course, who is that group? That group is not even the 1%, a fraction of the 1% of essentially white males, but not just white males, but of men in society who hold the wealth, who hold the social, cultural, and political power, and who are held up, as certain sociologists who study this matter coin the term, hold up a kind of a marketplace man, and this is the norm that is imposed on all men and are expected to live up to this. This is what is held up as being the exalted form of manhood that all men are not only expected to live up to, but also learn to admire and aspire to. And so the fact that most men cannot ever systemically possibly hope to have that kind of a position of power necessarily puts them in a position of feeling that they've been slighted when it comes to the rest of society, and now feeling a sense of resentment, which we are seeing coming viciously to the surface, and that resentment is targeted against women.
And this is playing out, isn't it, in the trolling of women online?
Absolutely.
Anytime a woman has a public presence on the web, she stands a very good chance of being insulted, doesn't she?
Absolutely. And of course, these men themselves do not recognize where their disempowerment is coming from in any way whatsoever. All they know is that the world is no longer a place that recognizes them in the way that they feel that at one point in time they would have been recognized had it not been for these feminazis or the feminist movement or whatever we may call it. But the fact of the matter is, this world that they're aspiring to never even really existed, never existed for them. And now it's simply that with the advent of the internet, perhaps I'm not a media expert, but suddenly their targets become solidified, crystallized, and it's easier for them to attack them online in the form of women.
But at the core of all this, Lisa, is the fact that we're dealing with misogyny. And there we've just had it. The New York State Attorney General himself, who was a great supporter of the Me Too movement, is now facing accusations of physical assault against women. So how do we as a society deal with misogyny? I know it's a big question and we don't have much time to answer it, but
I'm not about to save the world, no. But I do think that one of the most important things in dealing with misogyny is recognizing, and this is what I began by saying, is recognizing that misogyny is something that is systemic. It is not something that can be dealt with even within the framework of the Me Too movement, recognizing just individual situations as being accidental mishaps linked to one individual's abuse of power. But it's something that is absolutely systemic, that allows this kind of abuse to go on and systematize itself in such a way that no one recognizes it, no one calls it out, and in fact everyone is involved in a so-called cover-up. Obviously there are more sophisticated ways of analyzing it, but really this is what it's about. Misogyny is something that is deeply rooted and systemic, and the only way of addressing it in any kind of an effective way is by analyzing from on the level of a system.
Lisa Lincoln, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And And in a year dominated by the Me Too movement, the Cannes Film Festival was under pressure to address glaring gender imbalances in the competition for its top prize, the Palme d'Or. Still, out of this year's 21 entries, only 3 films were directed by women, a fact that does not sit well with this year's jury president, Australian actor Cate Blanchett.
It's a new era for the Cannes Film Festival, as the entertainment industry continues to grapple with issues of gender parity, fair pay and sexual harassment, all laid bare by the Me Too movement. Heading up this year's jury is Australian actress Cate Blanchett. She presides over the most female-centric jury in the festival's history. But she's acknowledged that the battle is far from over.
Profound, lasting change to occur, it needs to take place through specific actions, not through generalizations and not through pontification. It's addressing the gender gap, and it's addressing the racial diversity and the equality and the way we make the work.
The Cannes Film Festival has come under fire for its dearth of women directors. Of the 21 films vying for the coveted Palme d'Or this year, only 3 are directed by women. Jane Campion remains the only woman director to have won the award for her film The Piano back in 1993. Once a preferred hunting ground for disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein, festival organisers have taken great pains to distance the event from past scandals. Among the measures, a red carpet march by female stars to show solidarity with the Me Too and Time's Up movements. A special hotline and dedicated email address have also been set up to report misbehaviour for the first time, part of the festival's efforts to stop sexual harassment.
And that's it for now, and you can connect with us via our Facebook page, that of course being France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and yes, please keep those story ideas rolling in. So until our next show, bye for now.